Good afternoon, everybody. Gary Allen with you here on Main Street at 4 p.m. as I am every Friday. In case you're wondering, the medical stuff is going along just fine. The dental stuff will start pretty soon, and then you'll really don't want to watch anything at all. We have a great show for you today. We have a young lady on who has been nominated 3 times for a Grammy. She won a Grammy in 1982. We're going to talk about that. She was also the very first recording artist to be nominated in the same year for 2 different songs for movie themes. We're going to get into that too. She's a singer, songwriter, actress. She created a role on Blossom. We could talk about this young lady for the next 3 hours and never really even begin to scratch the surface of this amazing career of this young lady right here that we have this afternoon. So without further ado, Grammy nominated, Grammy winner, Academy nominated, and also a wonderful actress, singer, songwriter of such songs as Midnight Blue, what am I thinking here? Oh God! All of a sudden, my brain has gone on and up to lunch. But anyway, nevertheless, here's Melissa Manchester.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Somehow.
Do you want to get that?
No, somebody rang the phone. They keep ringing, and I keep getting these. I had a robocall today, Melissa. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Discover Card is willing to disregard your balance, what you owe. I don't owe Discover Card anything. I don't even have a Discover Card.
Okay, then. How kind of them.
a scam. I'm sorry that my brain went out to lunch there when I was introduced. Some of the songs that you have written, and I've got to read this off, is Through the Eyes of Love, which is a wonderful song from the Ice Castles.
I didn't write that. That was written by Carol Singh.
But you sang it, and that's wonderful. Don't Cry Out Loud, which is a beautiful song. Midnight Blue, as I will discuss in the Coming In From the Rain, which I love. You co-wrote that song. I know that. Just Too Many People, which you performed. I believe it was on the Grammys. Didn't you perform that song on the Grammys?
I don't think so.
Or did you do the one where you actually won the award for?
Yes,
which
you should hear how she talks about you.
Yeah. I love the performance on there. You were so wonderful. You were there. You were having a great time, and everybody seemed to really, really love it. Thanks. I want people to know a little bit about your background. Your dad and your mom were professional people. Your dad was a bassoonist in the New York Metropolitan Opera, and your mom was a professional woman. But I don't know what business did your mother begin?
My mother was a pioneer in the fashion industry. She was one of the first women to own her own design and manufacturing firm called Ruth Manchester Limited.
That's fantastic. Do you feel like you were born into the music industry with your dad and your mom, not pushing, but encouraging you to keep moving forward, to use your talents in the best way? Do you feel like...
Yeah, it's not that I was born into the music industry. I was born into an artistic family. And my parents were both black sheep of their family. And so the notion of encouraging my sister and I to be raised with our dreams intact and encouraged to move forward, that was our version of normal. It was festive and noisy, and we were in New York City. We lived in the Bronx and then in Manhattan on the Upper West Side, and it was a fantastic place to be raised.
That's great, because a lot of people from the World War II generation, like my mom and dad, when I said, no, I'm not going to pursue this, I'm going to pursue that, they were like, why don't you just get a job as a welder or something that's steady, that 40 years from now when you retire, you have something to show for it. And I think that probably is, if you went through the Depression, as my parents did, I'm sure your parents did, that leaves you with a sense of insecurity that you don't want to ever lose if you get the security blanket again.
Right. Yeah. And yes, for sure. I mean, my mother was raised in real destitution during the Depression, and yet somehow the choice that she made was to see the glass half full, to see life in and of itself as a grand idea to be pursued. And so it was remarkable to feel her intuition and her love for life come through me and my sister. And so, it's beautiful.
For those of you that are just joining us, my guest is Melissa Manchester. This is Mainstreet, Gary Allen with you. And please join us on twitch.tv/drinks, jokes, capital N storytelling. People that are watching on Facebook as well as YouTube. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. Do you think that growing up in a metropolitan area like New York or Philly, Chicago, Boston, the atmosphere, the culture, the flavors and the taste. I mean, you can stand on 42nd Street or you can stand in the middle of Times Square, which I have many times, and you can just take it all in. The pizza, you can smell this cooking, that flavor, these people, those people. Did that add to the music that you eventually co-wrote, sang? Was that all part of the wonderfulness of growing up in a major area like that?
Oh yeah, and the moment that I grew up in the Bronx and Manhattan in particular was so fantastic. I mean, the Parks Department in New York City really invested in programs for kids during the summer. And so I would literally stumble over adventures growing up. We lived on 88th Street, and on 83rd Street was the original Children's Television Network studio where they had the first season of Sesame Street. And I was 17 years old, and I walked down from my apartment to the studio, and I banged on the door. There was no security in those days. And the old stage manager opened the door and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Anything. Just, is there something for me to do?" And he sent me to the editing room at Sesame Street. And I was there that first season, and I was essentially a gopher. And the main discussion there was what would happen to the integrity of the program if they came out with a line of toys. So it was very, it was great. But I became a jingle singer when I was 15, and started doing my own demos when I was about 16. I became a poet and a staff writer when I was 17, and it was just the great place to be. I mean, I didn't really rebel against anything because I had such supportive parents. So I just had great adventures. I parked cars for a little theater company before I knew how to drive. I didn't think I would share that information. They didn't ask, and I didn't tell them. I was an usherette at the Vivian Beaumont Theater at Lincoln Center when I was 16. You know, it was just in the air, and it was such a nourishing place to be in for an artistic kid. I was not a very good student. I only went to college for 1 year because I wanted to work. I was working as a jingle singer. And when I asked my mom if she could help me learn how to balance my checkbook when I was 18, she realized that I was making more money than my dad. And so, you know, it was just that.
Yeah.
We were all kind of fluid.
Yeah, I mean, where I grew up in South Florida, and there is a great cultural divide between New York and South Florida. Now, today, the South Florida atmosphere and community is mostly Latin music, Latin stuff. I mean, even though the radio stations that I worked at, which a gentleman that interviewed you, Joe Johnson, a dear friend of mine, we've often talked about it, where we worked at one station and across the street was Criteria Music. And the limos would be pulling up and out would pop the Bee Gees, Eric Clapton, etc. We got to see all these people, but still growing up in South Florida, I will be honest with you, at 15 years old, the biggest thing in my life was that my brother played for the Baltimore Colts. And that was it. And is the Phillies winning today? You know, because I share that with my dear friend Bobby Rydell, who, by the way, folks, will be on this program sometime in June. We're working that out. But did you always gravitate to show business, and here's the question, because this has always come up, was there anything else in life you wanted to do? Did you ever think about it?
Well, yes, I always gravitated towards creative things because there was always music in the apartment. You know, we always listened to Broadway shows on the LPs because that's mostly where pop music was still coming from. And my dad would frequently take me down to the Met to watch a dress rehearsal when they couldn't find me a babysitter. And so I grew up in the wings of the opera, and, you know, and in those days you could go to a matinee for, you know, $2. And so it was, Was there anything else? There were two minor thoughts of things. I wanted to be an inventor because in those days, my teenage friends were starting to hitchhike with their guitars strapped to their back, and trying to strap a piano to your back is hazardous. And so I designed an acoustic portable piano. But then I was going through a book of antique instruments, and I saw that somebody had already designed one in around the 1700s, and I said, "Foo, I'm off." And then the only other thing that that I thought was interesting was to be a newscaster, because I used to do
Oh,
so many radio shows in those days, and they would, they'd let you read the weather or the news occasionally. And at one point, they said, "Would you like to read the news?" I said, "Sure." And the news was so awful, I got a case of the giggles because my nerves were getting to me. And I said, "This is not for me."
yeah. Oh, people think, and my original thing in life was not to be in radio or television. Mine was to follow in my dad's footsteps, but that didn't quite work out. So while I was in college, I interned at a number of radio stations in Miami. And one day, the girl who was supposed to read the news didn't show up, and they said, "You're going to be ripping and reading today," which back in the day was mean you literally ripped it off the AP wire, or and then
Yeah,
you read whatever it is, and they
right.
weren't full sentences. You had to fill in the blanks, and
Wow.
it is not easy.
No.
And a lot of people, and you know this because you're on stage, a lot of people think, "Oh, this is easy. Oh, yeah, it's easy." Yeah, Melissa Manchester makes it look easy because she's a professional on stage, or somebody is a talk show, even though I fumbled the introduction for you, which I still apologize for. But
Mhm.
the bottom line is it's not easy. You need to have a good idea of what you're doing.
Mhm.
And people in our radio station constantly do things to make the news readers screw up.
Oh,
I mean, I had a girl once literally take off all her clothes in front of me, and there was a mirror, there was a wall of glass in front of me, take up to make me laugh while I'm reading the news, and I'm reading the news about a very high socialite who passed away, and there's no way I'm going to laugh during that.
mhm.
But yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
People, professionals, make it look easy,
Yeah.
and everybody thinks they can do it until they get in front of the camera or whatever, and boom, it isn't. Um, did your dad teach you how to read and write music? Did you learn there?
No, no. I took piano lessons for quite a long time, but my eye hand coordination was much slower than my ear hand coordination. So I learned a lot of stuff by ear. I read
Mm-hmm.
very slowly. I write very slowly, but I do tend to write out my melodies so that I can create the groove in the brain between what's written and what I'm hearing to make
Mm-hmm.
sure it sort of concretizes. But no, my dad loved listening to my sister and I play scales with two hands, because on the bassoon you only play one hand at a time. And when I was about 10, I asked him if he would teach me how to play the bassoon because it sounded so beautiful. He said, "You're
Yeah.
much too young." I said, "Oh, just let me try." So if he put down the strap on the seat that gets hooked into the base of the bassoon, and he hooked the bassoon in, and he put the bassoon across my lap, and he said, "Okay, blow." And I blew into the bassoon and I fainted. I thought, this is not for me.
Yeah. I always wanted to learn how to play the trumpet because I've always enjoyed, well, piano playing and a trumpet, but I just never could. I just, I gave up. I went, no, this is not, I'll listen to Freddie Hubbard, or
Right.
I'll listen to Miles Davis, and I'll enjoy it.
Sure.
I'll live
Sure.
vicariously through
Right.
there. Did I read correctly that you can play the harpsichord?
No, I played the harpsichord for the National Lampoon Radio Dinner album, because I sang on that as Yoko Ono and the voice of Deteriorata. So in those days, it wasn't even an electric harpsichord. They had a piano set up, and I played on
Mm-hmm.
that, and then I turned around and played a little bit of the harpsichord. So that was
Uh,
interesting.
you have had the opportunity. You went to a New York university,
For
and
a year.
I don't know how, I don't, Paul Simon was a classmate?
No, I went to New York University to study acting for a year, and then I
Mm-hmm.
left to go back to singing jingles. And Paul Simon posted on the bulletin board that he wanted to teach. He was part of Simon and Garfunkel at that point,
Okay.
and he taught singing and record production for 6 months and auditioned everybody, including me. And so I studied with him for 6 months.
Oh, okay. Because it said in the bio that he was a classmate of yours at New
No,
York University. So
no,
apparently they've got that wrong. Oh well,
that's
here I go
correct.
again. Here I
That's right.
go. What was he like?
He was astounding, actually. Bridge Over Troubled Waters was #1 all over the world, and he had 6 months off and felt like teaching.
Hmm.
And the format of the class was very simple. Everybody had to come in with an idea for a title or a verse or a fully written song, and you'd play it once through, and everybody would go around and give an opinion or a suggestion, and including him. He would come in with his ideas as well. And what he taught, which is what I teach when I'm teaching master classes, which is that all of the stories have been told, and that is
Yeah.
true. It is the way
Yeah.
you tell your story that separates you and is your mark of authenticity. And that's the best you can hope for in writing.
Yeah.
It's very rare that there is such a new, unheard of story or angle. But it is the way you tell your story which really separates you out from everybody else. And he was incredible.
Yes, he was. I was telling a friend of mine the other day how one of my dear friends who's no longer with us really admired him a great deal
Hmm.
in the business and all. But as I said to you before the show, I have a brother who's a priest up in Boston. And before he went off to Virginia to go to school, I couldn't convince him to go to Miami, but before he went off to Virginia, he heard the song Midnight Blue.
Hmm.
And every time he hears that song now, it reminds him of that. And as a
Hmm.
matter of fact, he was in a class with Tina Fey, who you know from Saturday Night Live fame, and that song came on a radio or on somebody's cell phone or whatever it was at the time, and it takes him back. That has
Hmm.
to be for you as a singer, songwriter, and for anyone in the business, for someone to come up to you, whether it's at a restaurant or at a movie theater or wherever, and people to say, "Oh, your song brings back wonderful, beautiful memories." Is that something that you look for that's so encouraging and so wonderful to hear from people that they love what you did and love what you continue to do?
Well, it's certainly nothing that I look for. It is a component of the gift that keeps on giving. When you're
Mm-hmm.
writing a song, you're facing a blank piece of paper, so you have no idea of the outcome. So that my songs have endured for so many decades at this point that the feedback that I get from people is so extraordinary and humbling, and that I get to grow old with these beautiful songs. And the stories, what these songs mean to people is so astounding. It's not that you just serenade people through their lives. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
you're just part of the landscape of people's lives. It's that sometimes your song, I'm told, helps change a mind so that somebody chooses not to commit suicide,
Yeah.
so that somebody chooses to make a baby while your music is playing, so that you serenade somebody as they walk down the bridal aisle. This is no small stuff. And as my late
Yeah.
mother used to say, this is not nothing. And so these vehicles, which I think, songs have a spiritual component, in my opinion, and the ones that I've been blessed enough to be known for and be able to carry on, it's beautiful to perform them for people, because not only is it part of their memories, it also brings back things that they didn't realize they had forgotten. So it's very touching.
Yeah. Are any of them? I mean, I once had the honor of working with in San Diego, Tony Bennett, Mr. Benedetto, who I adore very much, and I was so and he's part of your new album, a tribute album that we're going to talk about that in just a little
Hmm.
while. I love him dearly, and I was so saddened by the fact that he's suffering from Alzheimer's, an insidious disease itself. But he always said, "I look at all the songs that I've done, even the ones that I didn't originate, as my babies."
Hmm.
And does that feel the same for you? That
It is. It's exactly the same. I mean, these are songs that were created in a room mostly out of conversations, and or they were songs that were sent to me mostly by friends, that where I got a chance to make them my own, and in the end they become these monologues that
hmm
you that you grow into. And the blessing of that is that these compositions are solid enough so there's always room for you to grow in and grow deeper into the
hmm
text. And songs that I wrote a long time ago, they are filled with a kind of weary wisdom. I don't know how I knew so much at the time, but as
hmm
I've grown older and I've grown into the songs, or the songs that Marvin Hamlish and Carol Sager wrote for me, or Peter Allen and Carol, um,
Oh, please,
these
Peter
are
Allen. I loved Peter Allen.
yes, yes, yes. He was a great songwriter and a lovely man, good
Yeah.
friend.
As these songs go down the turnpike
Hmm.
and each year, and you rediscover, do you rediscover something new with each song as you perform it today as you did 15 years ago?
Yes, it's your job to discover new. It's not about rediscovering; it's discovering anew. And there are things that I simply did that I had not yet experienced in life when I first
Right.
recorded these songs. I just had a really big, useful voice to
hmm
deliver these songs. But now, as a seasoned performer, uh, it's so joyous to share this with the audiences and what you see, because the audience is performing for you, they just don't know it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you're performing for them and it becomes more intimate, you
hmm
physically start to see them lean in.
Right.
And afterwards, when we used to be able to do meet and greet, the general feeling was, you made me feel like I was the only one you were singing to, and that's the intention.
Yeah. Tom, could you do me a favor? I don't know which one you have queued up. Let's hear some of Melissa's songs. One of her songs, please. I don't know which one he has queued up.
Whatever it is, it'll keep till the morning. Haven't we both got better things to do? Midnight, even the simple things become rough. Haven't we had enough? And I think we can make it
Mm.
one more time if we try. If we try one more time for all the old times,
Mm.
for all of the times you told me you need me, needing me now is something I could midnight
How beautiful is that?
blue. Thanks. Wouldn't you give your
I have a feeling you were singing that to about a couple that maybe was ready to break up.
Well, the song is very conversational, because when Carol Sager and I wrote it, that's how we would always start our writing process. It was simply, how are you today and how are you today? And we
hmm
were young marrieds at this time. We were young women at the very beginning of the women's movement, and we were trying to navigate our lives in these relationships. And so our songs together have a particularly conversational tone. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. You have worked with some really big hitters in this industry. Barry Manilow.
Hmm.
who introduced you to Bette Midler, and
Mhm.
then you became a Harlette, which that had to be a kick to.
Yes, yes, I was the founding member of the Harlettes, and it was great because Bette was still sort of at the beginning of her ascendancy, and she's really a brilliant woman, and
Mhm.
she was outrageous, of course, but she was so important in that moment when I was working for her to galvanize a very marginalized audience, which was the gay audience. It was very dangerous to be gay in those days, and yeah, it was great. I worked for her for 6 months, and it was
Mhm.
remarkable to watch her just transport an audience. It's
She
magic.
is she's remarkable on stage. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never had the honor of seeing her live. I've only seen her on television. And I know she recently did an interview and she talked about a career. And the interviewer said, "Are you as outrageous as we think?" And she said, "Oh, I'm totally nuts." She said, she said, I'm out there." She said, "I'm hard to get along with."
Yes. Well, yes. Well, let me
She's
qualify
right.
that. Let me qualify that. The truth is, she's a brilliant woman. She may be. She just has very. She's a visionary.
Yeah.
But the thing is that she's got the soul of a librarian. She's really smart,
Yeah.
and she does an enormous amount of research before she approaches any project, and she's really great.
Yeah. Creative people like Bette Midler, Barry Manilow, and others. Uh, I mean, they have their moments. I've worked with actors that have their moments, and it doesn't take away from how wonderful and how brilliant they are. And she said it, and she laughed about it. She said, "Hey, I like things a certain way, and that's it. And most people don't quite understand that." And she said, "Thank God my husband does."
Hmm.
So I mean, it's been that way. Um, we talked earlier about your mom and dad. Tom, could you put up those two pictures of Melissa's mom and dad, please? That's a picture. That's a
That's
picture of
Ruth.
your mom. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
She looks absolutely wonderful. She was encouraging to you, as
Yeah.
as a lot of parents are. And
Yeah.
and when was this picture taken?
That was taken at my son's bar mitzvah, actually, many years
Oh,
ago. Yeah, and she and I danced because that's what we did.
yeah, yeah. They my bar mitzvah was they did it twice. They weren't sure the first time.
Yeah. Well, my
The-
mother was a lovely singer, and she sang during World War II with her sisters. And that's my dad with his
yeah.
bassoon and me. It's right after we played on a PBS special called Over Easy in
Yeah.
San Francisco, and he played "Coming from the Rain" with me. The bassoon
Oh.
part was written for him, and the
Hmm.
song was sort of new at that point, so
Yeah.
it was very touching. Hmm.
Boy, yeah. I mean, a handsome gentleman indeed.
It was, yeah.
Um, when did I mean, was acting always something you wanted to do as well?
Um, uh, I I don't know how to answer that exactly.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when I was tootling around the streets of Manhattan, my wish to the universe was for my life to be special. And what I knew to do was music. I
Hmm.
wasn't that pulled towards acting. It sort of came to me. I created the role of Maddie Russo on Blossom, and that
Hmm.
was lovely because I got a chance to work with Mayim Bialik when she was a young teenager, and she was fantastic. And Bill Bixby was the director, the late Bill Bixby, and
Oh
all of
yeah.
those people were just so wonderful and touching. And then I took over for Bernadette Peters for the national tour of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Song and Dance.
Yes.
But I was never really a Broadway baby. I love to write for theater, and I have several times, but doing getting excited for an audition is not my idea of really exciting. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, sitting down to write is exciting, and performing is exciting. So I never energetically pursued acting.
Hmm.
I welcomed the adventures of doing it when they came to me, but they haven't come to me that often.
Does it factor in as an actor? Okay, because even though it wasn't something you really heavily pursued, but does it make a difference with your background in singing, being on stage, that it eases you into acting, that it's more comfortable for you than say you had never been a singer and suddenly you got some acting parts? I mean, does it make it easier for you? Is it a nice step one at a
My
time?
feeling is that acting is really sort of a distant cousin to singing. Because honestly, with singing, even if you left the meatloaf in the oven, the music buoys you towards
Hmm.
the end. But with acting, the words are surrounded by silence. So if you are not in that moment entirely, people are just going to see you thinking about that meatloaf, you know,
Yeah.
instead of being in the scene. So my hat is off to the great actors who who act, but the
Yeah.
ones who can do both is also amazing. I
Did,
mean, it was really interesting to do Blossom. It was great. It was
mhm.
really interesting to be in Andrew Lloyd Webber's song and dance because I was the entire act one and it was all sung through. So it was a lot of work and it's 8 shows a week. And I had a 9-month-old baby at the time and I got pregnant with my second child towards the end of the tour. I mean, oh,
Yeah.
really? Is there anything else I can do for you? And so, it was,
Yeah.
yeah. And I lived, and then I went back on the road. I've just been on the road most of my life.
How is that? I mean, raising a family, being married on the road. I know that a lot of people. I was on the road for a while with Engelbert and Tom Jones
Hmm.
and opening. And after a while, I just got tired of it. I just said, I'm getting up there in years, and I'm getting tired of this. Tom Dreesen, who's a friend of mine, says,
Hmm.
no, he never grows old of it. He loves it.
Right.
But there's some people that are born to that. Which, how was it for you? I mean, was there points where you said, time out, I got to go home and
No,
recuperate?
it was never because of the road. I mean, the road is very rigorous, and you have to really create some kind of a regimen because it takes. It's not just being on stage
Hmm.
that you have to prepare for. I mean, it's getting up at 4 in the morning to catch a plane
Mm,
or get on the bus or whatever. So you have to really learn how to pace your energy so you can be present for the performance. I love to perform and I love life on the road. It's what I'm very familiar with. I never took my kids on the road too much, and I tried not to be away from my kids too much. But I had a tribe of people helping me raise them when I moved out to California. My late parents moved out, and we had friends and aunts and uncles and cousins. And so I had help, and their dad was a very devoted dad, and so that's what we did. I mean, I see people who bring their kids on the road, and I'm just not that strong. I need to be silent during the day because my great big voice only has vocal cords this big, and I need to be able to access them for the
yeah.
performance. So I really, yeah. So anyway, you make it work. I mean, I asked my kids; they're now grown adults, but at one point, I said, "Was I gone too much? Did I seem to not be around?" And they said, "No, you were around.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
couldn't go to when I couldn't go to the student shows, I would go to the student dress rehearsals to make sure that my face was seen by my daughter or my
Right.
son
Did you ever? I know a lot of acts have done this. It's happened to me when I was on the road. Did you ever forget what city you were in?
all the time, all the time."
Yeah.
I wrote a song on my 20th album. It's called "You Gotta Love the Life," and that song, which is the first song of the album, it's all about not knowing where you are. But be that as it may, it's the juice of the life that keeps you going, and that
Hmm.
is compelling.
Yeah. I mean, my dad said to me, because I took care of him before he passed, and he was away a lot as an airline pilot, and he said to me, "You think I was away too much?" I said, "No, Dad. There was 9 of us. We kept each other occupied, and Mother was a disciplinarian." I said, "No." I said, I think the girls missed you, but not that much.
Mhm.
You mentioned someone's name who I have heard nothing but wonderful things about when I was living in LA. He was still alive then, and that was Bill Bixby. I mean, I have heard so many wonderful and beautiful things about that man. He
Yeah,
was
he
so
was great.
caring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was very caring, and when I worked with him, he was quite ill, and everybody knew it. And but he was very funny, and he was very present, and I was delighted to have been able to work with him for a time.
Yeah, my dear friend Will Schreiner says that he was really a wonderful, wonderful gentleman.
He
I
was.
wish I would have had the opportunity to meet him. You have also written with Carol Bear Sager. What's that like? I mean, when you're working, do you go to a certain place or do you stay at home and she comes over to your house, you go over to her house, and when you're composing, when you're writing together, or is it you write and then you bring whatever you've written together?
No,
I mean,
well, each collaborator works differently. With Carol, I would go over to her little apartment and we would talk, and out of our conversations would I would start to hear music, and then I'd sit at the piano and the lyrics would start to come out of her. And I didn't realize until decades later when she wrote about it in her book that I was the first artist that she ever collaborated with. She was a Brill Building songwriter. She was a writer for hire. So she wrote with other writers. And when
mhm,
she met me, and she met me because she saw me as one of the Harlettes singing for Bette Midler, and called me the
mhm,
next day and said, would you do a demo for me? Would you sing on a demo? And I did. And then she said, do you write? And I had just been starting to write, and I'd never had a collaborator before. So that's how we wrote together. But when I wrote with Bernie Taupin, I never saw Bernie. He would just send me a completed lyric. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And it was of such elevated language that I thought, well, this doesn't even need music. I'll just put it in a frame and hang it on the wall. It's magnificent. Or
yeah,
when I was writing with Paul Simon, we would sit and mull over an idea, and then we'd come up with a verse and a chorus, and he'd say, okay, I'm going to go home now and finish it, and then I'll bring it. So, everybody has a different way. And then when I'm
mm,
writing by myself, I try not to sit at the piano. I try to, because your hands, your body memory sort of goes into familiar patterns with chords and stuff.
right.
And so I try to walk around, or sit or be outside, take a walk, and just hear the music until I could really sing it back to myself over and over and over again, and then sit down and
Yeah.
figure out mnemonics for it. But it's very different for everybody.
Is it like writing a book? I mean, some authors say that it's a very lonely business. Is it a lonely business when you're a songwriter?
I don't think it's lonely. It's not. I mean, I don't find loneliness the applicable word. It's fascinating because you're putting puzzle pieces together. Somebody said that writing a song is like peeling an onion from the inside out, and it's true, because when you come up with an idea, for me anyway, you don't
Hmm.
know whether you're hearing the title or a piece of a lyric that's tucked into the second verse, and then you have to figure out who's singing this. I mean, this is what I talk about when I'm teaching: who is singing this. And if your goal is to create a monologue, so it sounds like one voice is singing all of these lines telling the story,
Hmm.
then that takes, it doesn't just take talent, it takes craft. Because when you're first writing, it's like discovering another language that you didn't know you had. It's a gush. Everything is fodder for a new song. But after a while, your editing skills become more refined, and hopefully you're writing more cohesive, better songs, more interesting
Yes.
songs.
Yes. In 1980, you were nominated, the only artist at that time to be nominated for two Academy Awards for two movie themes. What was that evening like for you?
It was pretty swell. I was wearing my first Bob Mackie gown.
Ooh.
I was singing beautiful songs written by glorious friends: Through the Eyes of Love and The Promise. I'll Never Say Goodbye by Marilyn and Alan Bergman, who are dear friends of mine. And I was wearing very high heels. And the director thought it'd be a really good idea for me to walk down two flights of stairs without a banister while singing
Oh,
in front of a
oh.
billion people. So
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was astounding. Again, I was very young, and it was at the very beginning, near at the beginning of my career, and it was really thrilling, really, really thrilling. Yeah.
You had to look around in that audience because obviously you sat and you're surrounded by
Yes.
mega stars.
Yes.
What
Yes.
was that? I mean, did you get to meet any of the people you always wanted to meet?
No. You're sort of in, and they do makeup and hair and costume, and then you are whisked away. But it was thrilling because I'd grown up watching the Academy Awards, and then to suddenly be part of it and have Mr. Mackey fit your gown on you for that segment.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly better than the dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you're not, because I was so full of nerves. I don't think I was fully present. I was fully present to sing the song, but I don't think I was fully present to relax into the moment and take it in, because it was a very, very elegant affair. And it was really thrilling. And then I got invited back, I think 2 years later, to sing again. And then there were waterfalls, dancing waters while I was singing. And it was, glorious.
Yeah, I've had friends of mine. One in particular, Robin Williams, who was nominated a number of
Mhm.
times, and he said it goes by the first time you hear your name, and whether you win or lose, you're sitting there and you're clapping. And he says you go on stage, you get the statue, and he said it's like it goes by so fast.
Yes, yes.
It's
You're not in
like,
the moment. You're just
yeah.
not. Yeah, yeah.
Was it different for you with the Grammys when you were nominated three times? You won in 1982. Was it a little bit different for you there?
Um, all of these things are so thrilling and out of body. And you're surrounded by people who are saying, "There's no way you can lose, no way you can lose," and of course you lose. But being nominated, the thing is, when you think about it, if you are nominated or if you win, you're one of a handful of people nominated on the planet.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you win, you're one of a smaller handful of people on the planet who can say that, and it's lovely. And the next day, your house is abloom with flowers that people send you and well wishes, and suddenly you're playing in much larger venues.
yes.
And yeah, I mean, it's just great. It's just great. Anybody that's cynical about any of this,
Hmm.
I think, is traveling down the wrong lane. But I mean, that's just my opinion. Because if you're fortunate enough to have the courage to walk the artist's walk, and if you are blessed and lucky enough for people to actually like what you do year after year, even when you change what you're doing and trying different things, it's amazing. You were mentioning Tony Bennett before.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's sad that he has, that he's slipping away, but he's 94 and
yeah,
he was on the road until he was 92. I mean, that's not a tragedy. That is a
no,
life well lived.
yeah, it
If he
is, and
was 22, that would be a tragedy, right?
yeah, yeah,
But he was such a fully realized soul. Pardon me, and he saw his life as a journey for learning. So he
hmm,
painted and he sang and he read and he was involved with civil rights and he marched with Dr. King. This is a grand life.
yes,
This is just
yes,
simply a life to be appreciated. That's
yeah.
all.
He's left no stone unturned. You,
Right.
as I said, you wrote two movie themes. Which, by the way, if you're nominated for an Academy Award, I don't care whether you win or whether you lose. The same as the Grammys, you've already won.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
It's,
mean,
it's, yeah, it's sweet.
there are people that are nominated for Academy Awards that you never hear from again, which is the sad part about this business of show business in general. Nowadays, it's like garbage in, garbage out. There's no time to enjoy the songs. There's no time to enjoy the movie. There's no time to let it grow on you. It's like it's in the movie theaters today and it's gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's my pet peeve, that we live in this push button society where nothing lasts. Like the old tunes that you did on "Let's Hear It for the Boys" on your album. I mean, you know, Tony Bennett wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in today's society. Back when he was 25, 30 years old singing. I mean, it's like today, tomorrow, gone. How do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, Let's Hear It for the Boys was by Denise Williams, so I'm not sure what you were referring to.
Isn't that the name? Isn't that isn't that the title of your album that you came out with, your tribute album?
It's called The
Um,
Fellas.
Oh, the fellas. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know why I put that down there, but somebody that sent me a bio on you said that was the title of the album. Let's hear it
No,
for the boys.
you should check your research because so far you're batting 1,000 today.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
I'm really out of it. I mean, maybe I'm still delirious from the operation. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. The Fellas is my 22nd album, And it's the completion of an idea. It started in 1989 when I recorded an album as a tribute to
Right.
many women singers that meant a lot to me, and it was called Tribute. And I'd always wanted to complete the idea with an album called The Fellas.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally was able to more recently. I'm artist in residence at Citrus College, which is a community college out here in Glendora, California. But they have an incredible music department. And so their big band played on the Fellas, and their big band is made up of students and alums and professors. So it was really incredible to watch these kids play this hard swing arrangements, and these are genres that they are not familiar with
Yeah.
at all. And to see them really get into the deep end of this was just unbelievable. They were trained beautifully. And
That's
I've
the
had them on
shame.
stage with me
Yeah.
more recently, and they're just incredible.
That's the shame of it. Back when we were growing up, we knew about classical music and jazz, and we knew
Hmm.
about Frank Sinatra, Dean
Hmm.
Martin, Tony Bennett, Count
Hmm.
Basie, Miles Davis. You heard that music. Today, they don't
Well,
hear it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is true. If they're not playing it in their family's home, it's very hard to learn about that music because there's no longer music appreciation in public schools, uh,
No.
and also and also pop music is not coming from the stages of Broadway the way it was from the 20s to the 60s, and so there was that connection. And yeah, it is true. It is true. It's just like being fed too much sugar. If you're only getting one portion of a type of food, you're not being nourished. So,
No, you're not. You also wrote for Disney for a number of
mhm.
animated. What is it like? I mean, I've done some animated voiceover work when I lived in Los Angeles, but what's it like for the person writing music for an animated series or an animated cartoon or an animated anything? What's the difference? Do they show you anything? Like they show the actors the script, and then you go in and you do what you have to do, and you have
Yeah,
some fun.
writing for animation is exactly like writing for theater. They show you the breakdown of the script in synopsis form, and so what you do. When I wrote Lady and the Tramp Part Two with Norman Gimbel, um,
Mm-hmm.
we would spot the songs, and we would end up musicalizing a scene. And through the concision of it, we would move the story forward, so you wouldn't need scene and scene and scene and dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
dialogue, dialogue. You would just make a musicalized scene out of it. And then when I wrote for The Great Mouse Detective, I was the third composer up at bat. They had tried two others. And it was interesting because Disney, for some reason, had stopped having songs in their animated features for a while. Some
Mm.
genius thought that was a really good idea. And then they created The Great Mouse Detective, and this was a standalone song because it took place in a dance hall. It was basically a Sherlock Holmes story, and there was this little dance hall mouse who was doing this song, and they sent me a couple of sketches of the way her body would move. And I had no indication. They just said, write a song. And I was listening to them and I said, but this is family fare, right? And he said, yes, it was, the art director. And I said, so you don't want something like Let Me Entertain You from Gypsy? No, said he, not at all. No, this is for the family. So I wrote him a song, and he called me and he said, I like this song very much. And he said, but it's a little, and he started to hem and haw. And I said, do you want me to write you Let Me Entertain You, like from Gypsy? And he said, yes, please. And so I did. And so it's in the movie, and it's delightful, and the animation is delightful, and the orchestration is fantastic, and it's me singing.
Yeah, I mean, animation is so much fun to
It
do
is.
as a voice actor. It really
Yeah.
is. My nephew was the original voice of Aladdin,
Oh,
and
cool.
now he didn't. He only got to work with Robin like 2 days, but he said, and the stories that Robin would tell, because Robin was a friend of mine, it was like they just put him in the booth and they just said
Yeah.
riff,
Yeah.
just riff,
Yeah.
and he was fantastic at it.
Yeah, I had
Uh,
the great opportunity to be in a Harvey Lembeck comedy class with Robin just for a night or two, and I knew that I wasn't meant to be on that stage because it was Robin Williams and John Ritter and all these incredible people. But I remember being on stage with Robin, and he just stood there with his hands clasped quietly in front of him while I tried to conjugate something that was humorous. He was so kind and so patient. He was a lovely guy.
I would introduce him at the Improv,
Mm-hmm.
and because I would MC from time to time, as a lot of comics have,
Mm-hmm.
and I would and he would let me and Howard Allen, who was the MC as well,
Right.
he'd let us go up there and riff with him for a little bit till he got warmed up and everything, and then there would be this look that would come over his eyes, and it would be like, okay, Gary, it's time for you to go. Goodbye. See you later. And then he would go on for an hour and a half, two
Oh yeah.
hours, and
Oh,
and and
he was unlike anybody.
and when he was done for that hour and a half, 2 hours, no other comic wanted to go up because he just there was nothing left in the room. It was
Right.
gone.
Right.
Everything was gone. You've worked with some very interesting people, including Barry Manilow. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about that and talk about Barry. I mean, I got to meet him a couple of times in Las Vegas. I got to see his show a number of times. By the way, I've been remiss. We've been so interested in this. You're listening to Mainstreet. Mainstreet. This is Melissa Manchester, Gary Allen with you as I am every Friday at 4. I'm not myself today for some strange reason. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the eye work. I don't know. But what was Barry like, and Carol and all the others? You also worked with a great singer, God rest his soul, in Al Jarreau. I mean, what were they like?
Well, Barry is an old friend of mine. We met during our jingle singing days, and we became very, very fast friends. He is a great friend. Um, Remarkable career, remarkable. Nobody's more surprised than he is in the end. But and he was the only one who I asked to sing a duet on The Fellas, and he was kind enough to not only say yes, but to come up with the idea to recreate the Gene Kelly, Judy Garland, note for note, Roger Eden's arrangement of For Me and My Gal, and that was
Hmm.
thrilling. And we've sung before, and I mean, he's a remarkable showman, and he is a superb musician and arranger and beautiful melodist, and he's just the consummate entertainer.
Yeah.
And as far as Al Jarreau, well, he was so dear. Al and I toured for a while. The last time I worked with him, I had written a song that was on "You Gotta Love the Life," my 20th album, called "Big Light." I wrote it with
Mhm.
John Prue, and I don't know how. There was no design on this piece. I mean, I created the album, and incredible people showed up to perform on it. You know, they heard about the project, and Al called me one night and he said, "Missy, it's Al. I hear you're making an album. Can I sing on it?" Yeah. So he came in, and the thing about the studio at Citrus College where I recorded this is the studio is not only magnificent and large, 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 but
Mhm.
our engineer is also the professor of audio training, of engineering training. And so when Al came in, there were all of these engineering students watching Al do what he did, which was become the instrument and do his Juro isms. And people had never seen that because mostly kids today are working with tracks. They are rarely seeing live performances. They are rarely seeing music made collaboratively. And
Mhm.
I wanted to experience it again, but I wanted students to see what that means, what it's like. You know, I brought in Stevie Wonder, and I brought in Dionne Warwick, and I brought in Al Jarreau, and I and Joe Sample played on this. It was really incredible. And at the end of Al singing on Big Light, I went into the studio to thank him and give him a hug, and I could feel that he was weeping. And he just whispered in my ear. He said, "Thank you. Keep doing this for all of us." It was lovely.
Yeah, he was something else.
It was.
Um, how did you, when you put together an album like you did Fellas,
Hmm.
how did you select? I mean, Tony Bennett has a large catalog, Frank
Right.
Sinatra does, Dean Martin
Right.
has. How did you select? I mean,
Well,
where did you?
it was, yeah, it was lovely research, and the intention was to find, in my opinion, what I thought would capture the essence of these fellas' extraordinary careers. Um, Tony Bennett was the last person that I researched, and when I watched his 90th birthday celebration from Radio City, and there were all these artists that sang in tribute to him, but at the end of the evening, he got up and sang "How Do You Keep the Music Playing?" I thought, well, this is the
Oh,
perfect song
oh.
to encapsulate his life and his
Mhm.
journey, because he has kept the music playing for himself. So that's how I did it. When I was paying tribute to Sinatra, because he had recorded night and day so many times over the course of his career, I I made sure that my arranger Peter Hume bridged the two versions that were most notable, because when he first recorded Night and Day in the 1940s, he was a young man, and Night and
Yeah.
Day was a very young song, and it was very simply done. And then when he did it with Nelson Riddle decades later, it was a heavy swing, very deep. So I made sure that in that one arrangement, we bridged those two sensibilities. So that was great.
I mean, did you find, I mean, the one thing about Sinatra and Tony Bennett and the great singers such as yourselves, you know how to phrase things.
Hmm.
You're not
Well,
just, you know,
the thing about those songs is that see, that's the thing. When I'm teaching, I really want my students to be mindful of the fact that the Great American Songbook is great because the ideas were long, because the melodies were long, and so therefore ideas could be developed, and so therefore it gave a lot of juice for the singers to sing. You breathe
mhm.
differently. When I assign songs from the American Songbook to young writers, young singer-songwriters, they'll always say to me, "I'm breathing so different because these such long ideas." Yeah, they're full sentences.
Yeah,
The sensibility of today's writing, which is rhythm first as opposed to melody first, is that the phrases are shorter and they repeat. And so everything's a sound bite. So
yeah.
it's different. It's a different sensibility.
Yeah, I always loved to watch Tony work, and I got to meet through my uncle who was a comedian on Miami Beach. We went to have lunch at the Fountain Blue one Saturday, and he took me there, and I didn't even ask who we were meeting. And we go into the restaurant to have something to eat, and who's sitting there to have lunch with him but Frank, Sammy, and Dean. And I
Oh,
got to meet all three. Yeah, I became good friends with Dean's younger son, Richie. Um, but I said to them, I just was questioning. I said, "What makes a good singer sing?" And Frank just turned around. And he said, "Phrasing." He said, if you
oh
know how
yeah,
to phrase, like Engelbert, I traveled with him and Tom, they know what they're doing. You know what you're doing. And I think that's the difference. And when you know how to do that, it makes the song rich, texture
yeah.
that people hold on to as compared to the stuff that we hear today. And it's like I said, here today, gone tomorrow. It's just
Hmm.
terrible. We've got a few minutes left in the program. And I apologize. My research was really, I don't know what happened, but
It's okay.
what What would you change about this business if you could? If there's anything you'd like to change to make it different for the younger generation coming up as compared to what you had to go through or what you think needs to be changed?
I have no idea. The industry is so entirely different than it was when I started. I mean, one thing that is being worked on in Congress is to be able to be paid better as a writer. You used to actually be able to make a living as a writer. And now, because there are so many more pieces of the pie that are being sliced off at the expense of the writer, which is completely disgusting in my opinion.
What?
So
Yeah. No, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So I would, I hope that that gets through Congress so that there's a reasonable payment for song usage and for songwriting. But in terms of understanding, learning the history of the song, um, yeah, I think there's always value to it. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I was raised in such a uh, musically broad variety of sounds in my household. And so I grew up knowing the difference between opera and Sinatra. And there was room for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but what defines a song these days is different than what used to define it to me. You know, hip hop has its place, but it's very interesting. Rap has its place. I don't know that I would call it a song, but kids do. And so, you know,
I think when you go to hip hop, it's more like a political statement than it is anything else nowadays. And one last question to you before we go. With everything that you know now, and you look back to that 15-year-old singing the jingles in New York City, what advice would you have given that 15-year-old now looking back?
Don't fret over everything and don't take most of it personally.
Yeah. And if you make a mistake and you move on and
Yeah.
you learn from it,
Yeah,
you know.
what I'm doing now is interesting. I'm not aware if it's in your research, but I'm actually in the process of
I'm
releasing my
throwing my research out, so it doesn't really
yeah,
matter.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, right now, I'm unfolding my 24th album called Review, which
Yeah.
is the re-recording of many of my hits. But in this time, because nobody was going anywhere for so long, per month I was recording and releasing a song with a video. So in September, I re-recorded "Just You and I" as an homage to the frontline workers, and then I did "Midnight Blue." All these videos are on my Facebook page and on YouTube. And so I just finished another one, and I'm just going to keep rolling it out until Review is a completed package.
How much do you think, because we're allowed to run over, my producer said it's no problem. How much do you think COVID has changed the business permanently? And how much of it do you think once we kind of get to the all clear, it'll go back to the way it was?
Yeah, I don't think it changed anything much permanently. I think it decimated my industry. Everything shut down um, for over a year. The last time I worked was the end of a year ago last February. I came back from Jakarta. I was singing at the jazz festival, and that was it. That was the end.
Yeah.
Um, but it was, and the entertainment industry had been known as recession proof, but nobody knew about a pandemic. And so I think little by little, I'm doing a gig in a couple of weeks, my first with Michael Feinstein in Carmel, Indiana, and we're only playing to a third of the house, but we're going to give it a
Mm,
shot. The night,
yeah.
the evening show is sold out, and the matinee is pretty close to that, and we're doing a live stream of that. And I'm starting to get some gigs, but most of them are still pushed back to 2022.
Well, you want to, how can people buy tickets for the show in Indiana?
If you go on my Facebook page, melissamanchester.com, everything is there, and it will direct you to where you can get tickets.
Well, we are out of time, and I want to thank you. Obviously, I need to get my new research people and get rid of the old ones, that's for sure. But I want to thank you, Melissa, for being with us for this hour. Don't go anywhere. As soon as we're off the air, I want to talk to you just for a couple of minutes.
Okay,
But I want to thank all of you out there for joining us here for Main Street. Gary Allen with you, my wonderful guest, Miss Melissa Manchester, Academy-nominated, Grammy Award winner, singer, songwriter, actor, a producer. I mean, she does it all, and I'm so grateful that she took the time to come on here, and I'm very proud of that. So
sure.
until next week, folks, take care of yourselves and each other.